April 18, 1988. The Persian Gulf, 60 miles off the Iranian coast. An Iranian missile boat named Joshan is closing on a group of American warships. Its captain has a choice: turn away or commit. He commits. On Wainwright's bridge, junior officers watch the surface radar plot update every few seconds, the range between the two ships shrinking with each sweep. Below decks in the Combat Information Center, sonar and surface search operators are calling out bearing, speed, and course on a contact that has stopped answering every hail sent across the bridge-to-bridge channel. Nobody in that room needs to be told what an unresponsive closing contact usually means. A single Harpoon missile leaves the deck of the 275-ton patrol boat and streaks low across the water, aimed straight at the guided missile cruiser, USS Wainwright. 4 minutes later, Joshan is a burning hull, dead in the water, hit by 4 Standard missiles and a Harpoon of its own. This is the story of the last stand-up naval gunfight the United States Navy has fought. No stealth, no ambush, broad daylight, open water, and a captain who bet his entire ship on one shot. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why that first Harpoon missed its target, how a frigate called USS Simpson answered in under a minute, and what happened to the Iranian sailors who lived through it. To understand why an Iranian warship sailed straight at an American cruiser, you need to go back 4 days, to April 14, 1988. The frigate USS Samuel B. Roberts was steaming through the central Gulf when its hull struck an Iranian-laid mine. The explosion blew a hole below the waterline and injured 10 sailors. Nobody died, but the ship nearly sank, and it came within a few feet of becoming the first American warship lost to enemy action since Vietnam. The damage control effort that followed is its own story of close margins. Seawater was pouring into the engineering spaces faster than the pumps could keep up, and for a stretch of nearly an hour, the crew fought the flooding with little more than shoring timbers, mattresses jammed against cracked bulkheads, and a chain of sailors passing pumps hand to hand through smoke-filled passageways. The ship's captain later credited that improvised effort, not any piece of built-in damage control equipment, with keeping Samuel B. Roberts afloat long enough to be towed to Dubai for emergency repairs. Iran had been ceding the shipping lanes for months. This was the middle of the tanker war, the maritime side of the Iran-Iraq war, where both countries had taken to attacking neutral oil tankers and each other's shipping. The United States had begun escorting reflagged Kuwaiti tankers under Operation Earnest Will, and that put American warships in the middle of a fight that wasn't originally theirs. The mine that hit Samuel B. Roberts wasn't a mystery weapon. 7 months earlier, in September of 1987, American Special Operations helicopters had caught an Iranian vessel called Iran Azure in the act, laying rows of moored contact mines in the dark along a shipping lane south of Bahrain. The helicopters opened fire, disabled the boat, and a boarding party later recovered mines still stacked on its deck, along with logbooks recording exactly where earlier mines had already been laid. That evidence built the case, presented afterward to the United Nations, that Iran was mining international waters it publicly denied touching. It also meant that when Samuel B. Roberts struck a mine in April, nobody in the Pentagon treated it as an isolated accident. It fit a pattern already documented in black and white. Washington wanted a response that actually hurt. Reagan authorized a retaliatory strike, and the Pentagon built a plan around 2 Iranian oil platforms, Sasan and Sirri, believed to be doubling as military watch posts for tracking and harassing merchant traffic through the Gulf. The operation got a name: Praying Mantis. In the planning sessions at Central Command in the days before the strike, officers debated how far to escalate if Iranian forces resisted the platform raids. Nobody in that room was planning to sink a frigate that day. The stated objective was narrow: destroy 2 platforms, prove the cost of mining international waters, and de-escalate. What actually happened once Iranian naval units started reacting on the water would end up far larger than anything drafted on paper beforehand. 3 surface action groups moved into position on the morning of April 18th. One of them was built around the guided missile cruiser USS Wainwright, CG-28, and the frigate USS Simpson, FFG-56. Their job was to destroy the Sirri platform and deal with any Iranian naval forces that showed up to contest it. Nobody expected an Iranian warship to sail straight at the formation and open fire first. Simpson was an Oliver Hazard Perry-class frigate, commissioned in 1985, built around a single Mark 13 launcher, that could fire the RIM-66 Standard missile. It wasn't designed to slug it out with a missile boat. It was designed to escort other ships, to screen convoys, to hunt submarines. Surface gunfights against an enemy warship weren't in its job description. Joshan was smaller, faster, and built for exactly one purpose. A Combattante II class fast attack craft, built in France, armed with a single harpoon launcher and a 76mm deck gun. What it lacked in size, it made up for with the one advantage a small, fast boat has over a heavier formation. It can close the range before anyone has time to fully react. By mid-morning, Iranian naval units were gathering near Sirri Island, watching the American strike group approach the platform. One of those units was Joshan. I went through the declassified after-action reports on this one more than once, and there's a detail that kept nagging at me. Joshan had every reason to break off. Every radar screen on that boat would have shown a cruiser, a frigate, and their embarked helicopters bearing down on it. It closed anyway. Around 8 a.m. local time, Joshan began accelerating toward the Wainwright surface group instead of holding position or turning off. American ships issued repeated warnings over bridge-to-bridge radio, telling the Iranian boat to stop, identify itself, or clear the area. Watch officers aboard Wainwright logged each warning as it went out, time-stamped to the second, standard procedure for building a record that would justify whatever came next. Every warning went unanswered. Lookouts on Wainwright's bridge wing had Joshan in binoculars well before the range closed to weapons distance, a low gray silhouette throwing a wake, running flat out on a heading that kept narrowing toward the American formation, instead of away from it. Joshan kept coming. Here's the part that doesn't make sense on the surface. A 275-ton patrol boat, alone, sailing into visual range of a cruiser, a frigate, and everything they could throw at it. On paper, this reads like a mistake nobody would actually make. In practice, the Iranian captain had a mission, and he intended to see it through, whatever the arithmetic said about his odds. At 8:13 a.m., Joshan's crew opened the missile hatch and fired a single harpoon at Wainwright. For a few seconds, nobody on the American side had a complete picture. A missile launch from a small boat isn't always confirmed the instant it happens. Radar operators had to pick the missile's signature out of surface clutter, and Wainwright's crew had a narrow window, somewhere under a minute, before that harpoon reached the ship. This is the obstacle nobody fully drills for. A real anti-ship missile, actually inbound, and less than 60 seconds to decide what to do about it. Wainwright fired chaff, clouds of metallic strips meant to give the harpoon's radar seeker something brighter to chase than the ship itself. The order to fire chaff came almost reflexively, the culmination of drills the crew had run dozens of times in training, but never once for real. Launchers on the superstructure fired in sequence, throwing bursts of foil into the air off the ship's beam, and for several agonizing seconds, the bridge crew had no way of knowing whether the countermeasure had actually pulled the missile's seeker away or whether Joshan's harpoon was still tracking true. It worked. The missile lost its lock and sailed past without hitting anything. One dodge, but Joshan had just used the only real weapon it carried, and missed. A missile boat that fires its lone harpoon and comes up empty has nothing left to threaten a warship group with, except a 76mm gun against a formation that outguns it in every direction. The harpoon missed. Joshan was still closing. And now every fire control officer in the American task group was working the same question. Does the frigate open fire now, or does it wait to see if the Iranian boat reloads and tries again? It did not wait long. Aboard USS Simpson, the captain gave the order to engage. The RIM-66 Standard missile in Simpson's magazine was built primarily to knock enemy aircraft out of the sky using semi-active radar homing, chasing a reflection bounced off the target by the ship's own fire control radar. Using it against a boat sitting low on the water, at a fraction of the altitude it was designed for, was not the textbook engagement. It was the only engagement available, and Simpson's crew had to make the missile's guidance work against a target it wasn't built to chase. In the seconds before the first launch, Simpson's tactical action officer had to talk the fire control team through a problem none of them had trained against directly: keeping a radar beam locked on a target skimming the wavetops, with sea return and clutter threatening to break the lock at any moment. The solution was brute persistence, holding the beam steady and trusting the missile's seeker to sort the target out of the noise once it got close enough. One missile left the rail, then a second, then a third, then a fourth. 4 standard missiles in rapid sequence, each one guided onto Joshan as the smaller boat tried to maneuver away across open water. A frigate armed to fight aircraft was emptying its magazine on a target 8 feet above the waterline, inside knife fight range for a weapon meant for something 40,000 feet up. Not every missile that leaves a launcher hits clean, but this is where sustained pressure mattered more than any single shot. Joshan had no real defense against a missile bearing down at better than twice the speed of sound. It had a deck gun and open water, and neither one was going to stop what was coming. Simpson's fire control team put 4 missiles into Joshan's hull inside of 2 minutes. Then Wainwright, still working through the tail end of dodging its own near miss, added a harpoon of its own into the burning wreck. By 8:17 a.m., 4 minutes after Joshan had fired first, the Iranian boat was a smoking hull, dead in the water, on fire from bow to stern. Here's what strikes me about this exchange. This wasn't a stealthy stalking match measured in days, the kind of story this channel usually tells about submarines creeping through the dark for weeks at a stretch. This was over before most people finish a cup of coffee. 4 minutes, 5 missiles, 1 boat. What this tells us about naval warfare in the missile age is almost uncomfortable to sit with. The old image of a captain, outmaneuvering an enemy over hours of cat and mouse, doesn't hold once a surface-to-air missile gets repurposed against a surface target at close range. Whoever fires first and correctly wins the exchange, and the smaller ship's margin for error runs close to 0. We'll say what a lot of naval histories tiptoe around. The Iranian captain's decision to fire on a numerically and technologically superior force wasn't bold. It was a mistake that cost his crew their ship and very nearly their lives. Some accounts frame it as defiant last resistance against a superpower navy. Strip away the romance and it reads as one officer committing his vessel to a fight. The numbers never let him win. Put yourself on that bridge for a second. Radar contact closing fast, warnings ignored, and a captain across the water who has already shown he's willing to shoot first. Would you have fired that harpoon, knowing what a Perry-class frigate and a guided missile cruiser could throw back? Or would you have turned for home the second the American radios told you to stand off? There's no clean answer sitting under that question, and it's the real hinge of this whole engagement. As Joshan burned, Wainwright and Simpson launched small boats to recover survivors from the water, a task complicated by drifting wreckage, secondary explosions still cooking off in the hull, and the risk that the burning ship's remaining ordnance could detonate at any moment. Sailors pulled from the water were badly burned in some cases, and Navy corpsmen aboard the American ships treated them on open decks before they were transferred below for further care. Survivors were questioned briefly under standard prisoner handling procedures, mostly basic identification and medical status, rather than any extended interrogation, before being processed for eventual repatriation. Accounts from the American side describe the recovered Iranian sailors as shocked, several of them still uncertain how quickly their ship had gone from launching a missile to sinking beneath them. Joshan wasn't the only target that day. While Simpson and Wainwright finished off the missile boat, other American units were trading fire with Iranian forces, defending the Sirri and Sasan platforms, and by the time the sun went down, both installations had been destroyed. The Sasan platform assault alone involved Marine detachments fast roping onto the structure under covering fire, setting demolition charges through its control rooms and fuel storage after Iranian personnel had been evacuated or captured, a boarding operation carried out under the same rules of engagement that had governed the naval side of the fight all day. Iran's frigate Sahand was sunk that same afternoon by strikes from the carrier Enterprise's air wing, and a sister ship, Sabalan, took heavy damage before the fighting finally stopped. Operation Praying Mantis, by nightfall, had become the largest United States surface engagement since World War II. But Joshan was the opening act, the first shot fired, and the first ship destroyed, and it set the tone for everything that followed that morning. Survivors were pulled from the burning water. Records on the exact number of Iranian sailors killed aboard Joshan vary between sources, with estimates running to a dozen or more of the crew lost, though Iran never published a full public accounting. What is documented is that the ship itself was a total loss, and that not a single American sailor was killed or seriously wounded in the entire exchange. For the U.S. Navy, the engagement proved something commanders had trained for without ever really testing under fire. Could a Perry-class frigate, built mainly as an anti-submarine escort, function as a surface combatant in a real gunfight against a warship? The answer, inside 4 minutes off Sirri Island, was yes. For Iran, the lesson landed differently. The Iranian Navy's willingness to challenge American surface groups in open water effectively ended that day. After Praying Mantis, Iran shifted hard toward asymmetric tactics against Gulf shipping, small boat swarms, mines laid at night, speedboats built to strike and vanish, rather than warships that could be tracked, locked, and destroyed in a straight fight. You can trace a direct line from the smoking wreck of Joshan to the doctrine Iran's Revolutionary Guard Navy still runs in the Strait of Hormuz decades later. One detail from the after-action reports has stayed with me since I first read through this case. Wainwright's crew had only moments to confirm the inbound track was a real missile and not a false return, and they still got chaff into the air in time to save the ship. That kind of split-second call, made correctly under real pressure with real lives on the line, doesn't show up in the 4-minute headline version of this story. It's the difference between a burning missile boat and a burning missile boat that also takes an American cruiser down with it. There's a darker footnote worth sitting with too. Less than 3 months later, in the same waters, the cruiser USS Vincennes would shoot down an Iranian civilian airliner, mistaking it for an attacking fighter, killing everyone aboard. 2 very different mornings, separated by 100 days, both born from the same impossible math this whole region forced on every captain out there. Seconds to decide, radar returns that don't explain themselves, and no room to be wrong twice. We didn't get into every piece of what happened elsewhere during Praying Mantis that day. The strikes on the Sasan platform, the full sinking of Sahand, the complete order of battle across all 3 surface action groups. Comment more if you want the full breakdown of the rest of that operation, because Joshan's 4 minutes were only the opening scene of a much longer day. Operation Praying Mantis remains, to this day, the largest surface naval battle the United States has fought since 1945. It ran from the mine strike on Samuel B. Roberts to the last American shot fired that evening, and it reshaped how Iran approached the U.S. Navy in the Gulf for decades afterward. Simpson and Wainwright kept serving for years after, their part in this story reduced to a footnote in most naval histories next to the bigger platform strikes and the sinking of Sahand. But for 4 minutes on the morning of April 18, 1988, a frigate never designed for surface combat fired everything it had at a missile boat that had just tried to kill an American cruiser, and it won every second of that exchange. Is this justice? A fair fight decided by better equipment and faster decisions? Or was Joshan's crew set up to lose the moment their captain gave the order to fire? Drop your answer in the comments. We read all of them. If you want the deep dive into the rest of Praying Mantis, the platform assaults, the sinking of Sahand, and how close Sabalon came to going down too, subscribe and tell us which Gulf engagement you want broken down next. There's a lot more from these 4 minutes that never made the headlines, and we're not done with the Persian Gulf yet.